Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel for the video today. And guys, I've got a confession. I'm going to come clean. I broke the law. I'm going to admit it. I haven't told anybody about this before. A lot of you guys that follow the channel here, you sort of interested in some of the stuff that I do in my personal life, so I'm going to share this with you guys, and curious to get your opinion on this whole thing here, and sort of see what you guys would have done in the same situation. So we're going to dig into that. Also, guys, a couple quick things before we get started here. Just want to remind you that SolarBat has got the biggest sale of the year going on right now with my Signature Series glasses. They got our nation's 250th anniversary sale going on. Half price, guys, 50% off on my Signature Series RB2s and 3s. Also, if you use the promo code RandyB, you get free shipping and handling. I'll put the SolarBat link in the description of this video if you guys would like to order a pair or two. Optical clarity second to none on these guys. You'll absolutely love these lenses here. And also, guys, thank you very much, man, for everybody that has taken time to subscribe to Intuitive Angling. All you guys that have joined as a channel member, appreciate it. Patreon member, just thank you very much for me and my family for supporting the channel. We really don't take that for granted. Okay, guys, I'm going to tell you the story that I haven't told before. And it might give you guys sort of an insight to if you guys watch the channel, you know that I have been talking constantly here lately about overdevelopment and these AI data centers and that type of stuff. Let me tell you a little bit about how this got started, how I got to be, so adamant about this topic. And some of you guys have heard part of this story, but nobody's heard the whole story here. But let me go back in time a little bit. I grew up in Joplin, Missouri, and my parents' house where I grew up at was also where my dad grew up at. In other words, he lived in the same house that I grew up in since 1938, and he bought the place off of my grandparents back in the 50s. So my dad has been in the same house that I grew up in too. And it's the house, if I want to get you this picture so you can understand what happened here. The house is sort of on the top of a hill, and down the hillside it turns into like this valley where there used to be like a big cornfield and soybean field. And then right next to the soybean field, there was a creek there called Turkey Creek. And so anyway, when I was a little kid, Dad always told stories about, his dad took him down to Turkey Creek and they'd fish and, catch bullheads to eat, about Dad hunting and trapping in that area there, the field below the house. This was back, just after the Depression. So they didn't have any money. So they hunted and trapped and fished for a lot of their food there. So he was telling me about all this area down there by the creek and between our house and the creek, which was only about a quarter of a mile. You could see it from our house. But this whole area is where Dad grew up trapping and hunting and fishing to survive. That's why my dad never wanted me to hunt or trap or anything when I grew up, because he goes, Randy, I'm not going to do that anymore. He goes, that's how we had to survive when I was a kid. I don't want to do that anymore. So anyway, this is how I got interested in this creek down there, is the stories Dad told me about. So when I was about 7 years old, every day after I got out of school, I would walk down from our house through the big, field down there. Half of the year there was nothing there. Half of the year was soybeans or corn. And I'd walk through the field to get to the creek, to Turkey Creek. And that's where I learned about fishing. It's like I waded the creek every day, turned over rocks. I caught my first bass there, caught my first perch there. I'd go down almost every single day after school, and it was just me. And I took care of that creek. It's like, there would be some assholes down there that would go under. There's a bridge right there, by our house. And there would be some assholes go down there and throw out beer cans, and I'd pick them up. So I took care of this little creek, forever. So you guys may have heard me talking about the time somebody threw a big 55-gallon trash bag full of trash right off into the creek off the bridge while I was standing underneath it, which that got me into this, environmental thing. I was so pissed off about it, I could have freaking skinned those people alive. Probably would have if I'd have caught them when I was 10 years old. So anyway, when I was 10, what happened when I was 10 years old, I was in second grade. Dad came up to me and he said, Randy, he goes, I got to tell you something. He goes, they're getting ready to put in a big housing development, right at the bottom of the hill. And I'm like, what are you talking about? he goes, yeah, they're going to put in a big housing development in that field there. It's about 50 acres, where, just right below our house. And I go, they can't do that. I said, that's going to ruin everything. Where are the deer going to eat? I jump up deer every day there, deer and foxes, and I saw bobcats in there. I'd walk through it every single day, and it was like my field too on the way to my creek. And I go, they can't do that. That's going to ruin everything. And I started crying, and I was just so mad, because what happened is the road in front of my parents' house, it was a 2-lane road, and it was very quiet, no traffic. And he said, yeah, and he said also they're going to widen our road in front of our house to 4 lanes. And I am just like, I was crying. It's like they're going to make a 4-lane road in front of our house, and they're going to put in a big housing development right in my sanctuary. And I remember Dad goes, well, Randy, goes, you can't stop progress. I said, yes, you can. I said, this is stupid. He goes, I remember going to my bedroom and just crying about it. So anyway, what happened is, over the next few weeks, this started to happen. The construction, not construction, but the preparation for it. And the first thing they did was they put one of those big rubber lines across the road right in front of our house. And there was a checker on it, and it checked how many cars were going over the road. So they were doing some study about how many cars were going to use this 4-lane road. And I'd go out there every day, and I'd see this clicker about how many cars were going across the road. And then they started moving heavy equipment down into the field. So I'm looking down into my field down there, and there's excavators, and there's front loaders, and there's dump trucks everywhere down there. And I'm freaking out of my mind. I am mad as a freaking hornet. I'm a 10-year-old boy. You got to remember, I'm in 2nd grade. So anyway, I got to the boiling point where I couldn't stand it. And I said, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. So what I did is I went into the garage, and I got an axe. And I went over there, of course, when my parents couldn't see me, my dad was at work or something, or nobody was around. And I went out in front of the house, and I cut that cord in half. The cord that the highway department out there cut it in half. And then the next day they came in there and they replaced it with a new one. I went out there the next day and cut that in half. I did this for 4 days in a row. I cut this cord in half, and eventually I got to the point where I probably ought to stop. And of course, I'm not saying anything to my parents, Of course, I got to the point where I say, well, I've cut this thing 4 times. Maybe they're going to catch me. So I stopped doing that. So then I started noticing they got in there, and the heavy equipment started moving, and they started knocking down trees. They started flattening everything out. There was dust clouds everywhere. They were right up against the creek. And I'm watching in horror as they just destroy my sanctuary. Okay, I went down there that evening, one evening they come out, and I didn't know what I was doing. I took a pair of side cutters, and I went down there to that heavy equipment, and I started cutting every piece of wire that I could get to on that heavy machinery, trying to sabotage it. As a 2nd grader, and you gotta remember, I'm not some adult, I'm 10 years old, and I did that for 2 or 3 nights in a row, and I was just so freaking mad I couldn't stand it. And eventually it's like, I've got to stop this. I know I'm going to get caught if I keep doing that. And so I stopped it after about 2 or 3 days. And then everything took its course. They started putting just, cookie cutter houses side by side, completely destroyed the area. They put them right up against the creek. So all the erosion from that construction and from the, dirt work and everything was going into the creek. It started eroding the creek out. And over the next couple years, all of these deep pools that were in the creek were completely silted in and filled in by sediment from this construction. And it completely destroyed the area. There's no wildlife in there. It completely destroyed the aesthetics of the area. And this is where it started. If you guys want to know why I'm so adamant about that against development now, that's what happened to me when I was little to form that. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about why people say, oh, Randy, people got places to live. I'm not saying that they don't. But here's what should have happened on this thing. You guys have heard me talking about zoning and planning commissioners who I have no respect for. Guys, now, there may be an exception, guys. There may be an elected zoning and planning commissioner out there that sort of has my mindset and they're responsible environmentally, but if there is, I haven't met one. Most of these zoning and planning commissioners I have met, and I've met a lot of them, are ignorant. They're inept, they're ignorant, they're greedy, they're money hungry. It's grow, 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 develop, 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 get bigger, bigger, bigger. Grease my palm if you're a developer. I got no respect for 99% of the zoning and planning people I have met. If this is what should have happened in that situation down at my place when I was a little kid. When the builder came to the zoning and planning commissioners, they should have, with this plan to do this, the zoning and planning commissioner should have went down there and checked it out. And they should have said, you know what, Mr. Developer, whatever, we're not going to grant you this permit because you are going to put this subdivision in a very environmentally sensitive area. This construction that you're going to cause is not only you're going to, destroy tremendous amount of wildlife habitat, but you're also going to degrade and erode, cause siltation, pollution, whatever, into this creek here. So we're denying your permit. If you want to build your housing development, that's fine. Go find an area that is not environmentally sensitive. This is not what happens, guys. The developers get their way 99% of the time. And the problem that I have is all of these developers right now that are eating up your hunting habitat and your fishing habitat and your wild areas. It's happening in your hometown too, guys. You know what I'm talking about. We're all losing hunting habitat. We're all losing wild places. We're all losing wildlife habitat to these damn developers. The zoning and planning commissioners need to step in and say no to these people. And they say, hey, if you want, you've got this 100-house subdivision that you want to put in. You are not putting it in right here. We will not grant you this permit because it's too environmentally sensitive. There's too many creatures that depend on this area right here. If you want to put your housing development, hey, there's a track right over here. I can find you a track, a 100-acre track right over here that is going to be more suitable because it's not going to be in an environmentally sensitive area. You're not going to destroy the aesthetics of an area. Put your housing development here. You will not be allowed to put it there. That's the type of people we need in positions of power in this country, and we don't. We are in the Wild West right now, guys. Our environmental regulations have been gutted. They've been deregulated. There is nothing out there. We have no safeguards to protect ourselves. And it all goes back, guys, to legislation. You have got to pay attention to who you vote for in terms of the legislation and their voting records on these areas that I'm talking about with development. If you like to hunt and if you like to fish and you like wild places and you want to have wildlife habitat for your grandchildren, you better pay close attention to the voting records of these people that you're putting into power, because the ones that side with the developers and the polluters and ignore all the stuff that's precious to outdoorsmen, those people need to be voted out of office. I don't care what party you're in. It has everything to do with the sustainability issues and handing this planet off in a better state than we found it to our grandchildren. And right now we are failing them. We are failing them in a big way, and it is perpetuated in a massive way by developers and zoning and planning commissioners and county commissioners and city councils that are in bed with these developers. That is the reality of the situation 9 times out of 10. I'm not saying 10 times out of 10 because there's always exceptions, but 9 times out of 10, that is what is going on here. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think about it. We'll talk later.